Hello. Hello. Okay. Can you hear me? Hi, guys. Can you hear me on the Google Hangout? Hello. Let's just wait for some time. We're just waiting for other sort of folks to also join in. Yeah, I'm just waiting for most of the folks to join in. So give us a couple of minutes before we can get on with the live session today. I'm just checking if you can let me know if you guys are able to see the live chat as well. All right, guys. So let's get going with it. First of all, thank you very much for taking out time on a Sunday afternoon for this live session. I welcome you all for this live session. This is the third live session that we are having as part of the program. So I believe all of you guys would have gone through pretty much the entire session that you were supposed to by now. And I mean, I think by now it should have been the entire 3 weeks of studies that should have been done by at your end. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to sort of disable my email and everything. Just give me 1 second. I think the objective of today's session, guys, is essentially to sort of run you through an important concept that you guys would have gone through over the period of the last few days, which is on critical success factor. I think critical success factor is a very important concept for all of you as you are starting up to have a very clear grasp on, because as you start sort of working towards your own venture, there will be multiple things that you will be going through. There will be multiple things that you'll be going through, which you should sort of, certain things that you should definitely keep in mind as you sort of start scaling up the venture, because of those multiple things that you need to do well, there will be 1 or 2 things that you really, really need to have a very strong grasp on. So I think today's session, what I'm going to do is for the first half, take you through a set of slides that we have created on critical success factors. Post which, we will open up to certain questions that you may have about your own venture. So we received some questions from you guys filled up on a Google form, which we will provide answers to. But at the same time, I'll keep the sort of chat session open. So if you have any questions, just send it with a hashtag which says Ask Mayank, hashtag Ask Mayank, and then the question. And I think the question will come to me and I can sort of pick up those questions and answer those one by one. I'm just going to take up, just sort of pausing it a bit. Give me 1 second and I'm going to sort of make some changes such that there is no sort of issue when we start going on with the session. All right, guys. So I think just to start off, what I'm going to do is right now share my screen. We are going to sort of go through a set of slides that we have created for you to sort of go through. And once we go through the slides, I think it will cover some of the critical concepts of critical success factor, and after which we'll pick up some of these live questions. All right. So let me sort of get those slides on. Perfect. So you guys can see the slides.
After 20 seconds.
Okay. Perfect. So now I think what the objective is, and I'll just run you through the agenda. There are three things that we want to cover on this session. The first one is just a recap of critical success factor and KPI, which I believe you guys would have gone through as part of the session. And if you have not, please take out time to go through this, because this is a very important aspect as you start thinking of your venture. So I think this is getting covered as part of session 10 and session 11. There are these two important concepts that all of you must be sort of aware of. So we are first going to do a quick recap of what those critical success factors are and what KPI means. Post that, we'll pick up one example of Zomato, because I think in the session 10 and session 11, you guys have gone through an example of Snapdeal, Ola or Uber, and Oyo Rooms, along with Marush. So we are going to pick up one more example and see those critical success factor getting applied to the Zomato example. And post which, we are going to open up the session for some Q&A and certain specific questions. So during the entire discussion, if you have any question, please put in your question on the chat forum with hashtag AskMayank, and those questions will be picked up, and I can sort of answer those once we have gone through the slides. All right. So let's get going with the slides. I just want to sort of get you guys through a quick recap of what critical success factors are. Now, I think I'll just start with we are on slide number 3, with a very sort of clear definition of what critical success factors are. And then I'm going to talk about tactically how should we look at critical success factor for our own venture. Now, the genesis of, or a very textbook example of critical success factor would be that you have a very strong vision, which is a long-term ambition as to what you want your venture to be, which leads to what do you want to do today, which is your mission statement, what's relevant for you today. And that mission statement can be broken down into individual goals that you would have created. So for example, the goal could be, your vision could be that I want to create the largest food discovery platform in the world that would cater to a billion, that would touch the lives of about 1 billion people in the next 5 years. The mission could be today to sort of provide a seamless experience to individual, and the goal 1 could be to reach 1 million people in a particular city. And that goal will entail certain specific activities, and each of these activities by definition is called the critical success factor. So it's essentially those activities required that allows you to meet your goals, mission, and vision. Now, it's a very, very sort of theoretical textbook example. What I wanted to do in this session was to sort of take the same example and tell you very, very tactically how should you guys think about critical success factors. Now, let me take you to the first approach on a very tactical basis, and which we call the UpGrad way of figuring out critical success factor, is a formula-based approach. And I really like formula-based approaches because it just breaks down the entire problem into very simple and in a very lucid way. You can understand what those critical success factors are going to be for your own venture. What I'm going to do right now is to take you through the example that you would have gone through in session 11 with Marush, and just talk about what does exactly formula-based approach mean. Now, when you are setting up your venture, there are certain vision, mission, and goals that we spoke of earlier. Each of these goals, in a very nutshell manner, can be broken down to a very simple formula. And if you break down that same thing into a simple formula, it allows you to figure out what are the critical drivers that lead to meeting that particular goal. So for example, in case of Marush, let me give you a very simplistic way of sort of looking at approach means. The goal could be sales. And in order to sort of achieve the sales, there are two very simple factors of price and volume. And that's how you sort of define what, let's say, if Marush has to meet its objective, it needs to focus on what the pricing of the product should be and what the volume of the product that they should sort of end up getting. Further breaking down price, and sorry, just to remind everyone, if you guys are not aware, A, we are on slide 4, and B, Marush is a quick service restaurant that offers Lebanese cuisine in Western India. So let me just pick up the first element of the quick service restaurant Marush, which is price. Now, price is a combination of average price per item multiplied by number of items in a order. So if I go to Marush and I'm one particular order, I along with my 3 friends, we go into a restaurant, we say, okay, look, per item that is there on the menu cost us this much. And per order, there are sort of, in my particular order, I'll order 5 items, etc. So for Marush, in order to sort of move up price, it's all about figuring out the right pricing strategy and also figuring out the right cross-selling and bundling strategy, such that can they give for every role that they're offering a Coke at a certain price point, such that person can buy slightly more? Can they offer an entire package of a meal menu, which is a lunch menu that everyone can sort of go through? That kind of bundling and that kind of cross-selling defines Marush's ability to be able to sort of achieve these goals. So that becomes the critical success factor. So as the CEO of Marush, or as the CEO of an entrepreneur running Marush or a food store, I will always think about how should I price my product such that the uptake is fairly high? How should I bundle my sort of product such that people end up paying slightly more than what they sort of initially imagined to pay? So that's the first bit of price. And then comes the important element of volume. And again, for a lot of your venture, you should think of how you can break down your goals into a very simple formula. And for example, in case of Marush, the volume is broken down into how many restaurant locations do they have and what's the size of that location? How many seats can they fit in that particular restaurant? What's the occupancy ratio of the seat? And then how quickly they can turn around on a per seat basis. Now, let me just pick up each one of them. As a restaurant, it is very important, and location for any restaurant or retail chain is absolutely critical. So you need to have a very clear sense of where do you want to open your restaurants. What are the locations? Should you open it in a mall? Should you open it up in an office space? How do you sort of go about identifying this real estate depending upon the demand in that particular pocket is a critical success factor for a restaurant business. So usually in a restaurant, there's a BD team that focuses largely on identifying pockets where they can get a significant demand for their own product. Second is an architectural layout of that particular location that you have picked up. In a sort of a high street mall, you may end up getting a smaller location. Therefore, you need to figure out how you want to sort of structure your entire sort of internal of the restaurant such that you can fit in maximum number of seats, because that's a capacity constraint for your own restaurant. And therefore, having a strong architectural layout that you can fit in maximum seats per square feet of area is going to be a critical success factor in case of a restaurant chain like Marush. The third important element is occupancy ratio, which is that you have 50 chairs in a particular locality or location. How many maximum that you can fill up? It's a clear function of the quality of service that you offer and the marketing that you do. And therefore, for a quick service restaurant, marketing and the service level becomes a critical success factor for them to drive volumes. And the third one actually boils down to a turnaround per seat, which is if a person comes in, are they occupying the seat for 15 minutes, 100 minutes, or 20 minutes and they leave? And therefore, having a very standardized process, very standardized menu, such that they can turn around orders fairly quickly becomes the critical success factor for Marush. So in a nutshell, what I wanted to sort of do this with this example for you guys is to tell you and bring you closer to a tactical way of looking at how to think of critical success factor is by breaking down the same problem statement into a very simple formula. If you want to do it, and we'll run you through an example with Zomato as well. But just for you own to sort of think and start stimulating your brain, think of how you want to take a particular goal, break it down into a formula, and be able to sort of come out with what should be the critical success factor for each one of them. Now, that's one way of looking at critical success factor. We'll give you another UpGrad way of looking at critical success factor, which we call it as a value chain based approach. Again, I'm going to pick up the example that we had in session 10, which was of Snapdeal. In a very simple basis, sit down and sort of think about what your business is going to achieve at the end of the day when you sort of launch your own sort of venture idea. For example, in Snapdeal, what exactly does it mean for Snapdeal to be successful? Think of the process that a Snapdeal would be thinking through as they go about running through the internal sets of initiatives. At Snapdeal, you need to have as many product offerings as they can offer, which is the first item on the value chain, which is breadth of offering. If you have as many a mobile phone to a toothbrush to a toothpaste or to going up to an electronic sort of fridge, refrigerator, etc., that breadth of offering becomes very relevant for a marketplace model like Snapdeal. Once you have that breadth of offering, it's giving a very intuitive and easy way for people to search and find out those offerings on the platform such that it doesn't become very cluttered and people are not able to find what they're looking for. And therefore, having a very easy navigation becomes quite important for Snapdeal to be successful. Third is about attracting customer. Yes, I have a great product offering. I have a good platform where people can easily search. But if customers are not coming, then those value propositions go for a toss. And therefore, attracting customer becomes critical. Once you get those customers and they have searched through the offerings, figured out what they want to buy, you have to deliver them at the right time, in the right amount of cost, wherein the delivery becomes quite a critical component of your success factor. And then finally, in the long run, not today, but as Snapdeal evolves, it should end up happening that if Mayank is going on to Snapdeal's platform, they should be able to recommend me what I need to buy. And therefore, the personalized experience becomes very, very useful. So if you break down the entire business process chain for your own venture idea, you will be able to figure out what will be the critical success factor there. So for example, in case of Snapdeal, if the breadth of offering is an important part of the value chain, the critical success factor becomes tying up with the right number of sellers. And that's what a team at Snapdeal will be focusing on, going out and talking to vendors and getting on the platform such that they can bring in a breadth of offering onto the Snapdeal's platform. Second becomes the ability to search, wherein having the right sort of UI UX, figuring out the right accurate product information for the individuals to go through becomes a critical component of their success factor as well. So a strong product and technology team that takes care of the platform is an important part of Snapdeal to be successful, because at the end of the day, if the platform is not that user-friendly, people will come in, they will get disappointed, they will not come back again and again. Attracting customers, again, it's a function of digital marketing, television ads, tie-ups, affiliates, etc., wherein Snapdeal can get the customers to come on the platform, try out the product. To me, the delivery component becomes quite useful here because ultimately it's you can get all these things on the platform to happen, but if you are not giving them the right kind of service levels, a lot of customers will be dissatisfied. Therefore, managing the logistics is a critical success factor for Snapdeal. There's a dedicated team that takes care of that. Tying up with delivery partners. So if they have to do a third-party logistics, who are the delivery partners that they should talk to? Effective warehousing and distribution. A Snapdeal has to go to different locations and actually sort of store those products in those locations, and therefore having right pockets and hubs where they can save and store these products is become important. Having a very strong quality control. You don't want to order an iPhone and not get an iPhone and get a Samsung product, etc., is something that they need to maintain very clearly at Snapdeal end. So as part of a Snapdeal, if you are thinking of a marketplace venture, these items become a very strong critical success factor for your own success. And therefore, you need to think about these very carefully. The final thing in terms of the personalized data experience is to have a very strong data science platform. You cannot just rely on one thing and assume that your product will continue. Your product has to continue to evolve over the course of time. Therefore, whatever data that you capture with the user coming in, what they are searching, what kind of products is selling most, you should be able to create a personalized experience for the next set of buyers coming onto your platform. And therefore, that personalized experience becomes quite crucial for a Snapdeal success. So I think those the objective of just running you through these examples was to give you a good sense of how to think about these critical success factor for the venture that you guys may be thinking of. A formula-based approach is a very intuitive, very structured way of coming out with what are the elements that you need to take care in your venture success. Value chain-based approach actually allows you to break down the entire process into smaller chunks and then go deep into figuring out what that critical success factor for your own venture could be. All right, just wanted to sort of take a small pause here, and I can pick up one or two questions if anything has come on the platform. Let me just sort of have a quick look as to the questions that are coming up on the platform. Yeah. So I think I'm going to pick up one question that Romil had sent across, which is about his own venture idea in terms of being a. So what Romil is currently doing is offering an online styling services, which is designed entirely for men, where you can get the clothes picked up for you by a stylist free of cost. And then you can spend whatever the stylist picks up, you can then sort of go and sort of find out the right product and buy the product from an online commerce venture. So it could, and again, Romil, if I understand the statement correctly, it could be for a Snapdeal that you're tying up or Myntra that you're tying up with. A stylist comes to Mayank saying that, Mayank, look, you buy a lot of product. Let me help you come out with the right kind of styling. And I, as Mayank said, okay, fine, get me what color suits me better. Is it red? Is it yellow? Is it green? They give me a good idea. Then I go back to Myntra and I buy the product. So I think it's an interesting sort of area that you are focusing on, Romil. I think in this case, if you're thinking of the critical success factor, it's going to be the kind of service that you can offer at the end of the day. How can you source those stylists to come onto your platform is if it's going to be a individual driven recommendation, and that is going to sort of create a success for you in this venture if you can get the right kind of stylist at the end of the day. If you want to make it a tech-based styling platform, I think there it will become very, very crucial for you to have a very strong technology platform where individuals can come in, put in their request, and it becomes a more an artificial intelligent way of sort of coming out with what kind of styling works for me. And that will be a sort of a scalable model. But just remember, as you think of an affiliate model, the challenge there is that you are offering these services for free, which is a question that you need to ask yourself, why should I offer these services for free if it is valuable? And second, that ultimately you are playing for the marketing dollar. So if a product is for 100 rupee, a Flipkart spends, let's say, 20-30 rupee on the marketing dollar, or maybe 10 rupees on the marketing dollar. What you are coming and telling Flipkart that if you are spending 10 rupee, I can do it in 9 rupees, and therefore pay me 9 rupees, and it saves you the cost. So ultimately, you are just working for a very small part of the value chain at the end of the day. If you have to sort of scale up, you need to think of that as another element of what you are sort of bringing to the table. So hope, Romil, this gives you an answer to the question that you had. There was a question that came from Dastan Wala also. Would retail outlet make sense for Snapdeal? I think O2O, which is a concept which is going to come up in India very quickly, and it's coming up very slowly in some segments, is an offline to online or online to offline model, where I think offline will become a critical part of what you offer in an online environment. So if you look at it, Dastan Wala, if you look at what guys like Pepperfry or Urban Ladder are doing, is if you go to an airport, there's a small studio that they have set up there, which gives an offline experience for people to experience a product, and if that experience is important. So an offline component becomes important for a Pepperfry there. For a venture like Snapdeal, they need to figure out what experience they want to provide on the platform. Having said that, Amazon in the US is moving towards offline option. They are setting up offline store. So it comes a full cycle. And I think some of these elements, I think, has started happening in China also. I think very soon in India as well, these O2O models will become quite prevalent, and we'll see sort of more of that in the future. So let me just go back to the slides that I'd created, such that we can move forward with some sort of more tangible examples. Now, before I go on to that Zomato example, let me just sort of quickly touch upon another important concept that we spoke of, and I'm on slide 6 right now, which is on key performance indicator. What exactly key performance indicator means? Now, as an entrepreneur, there will be multiple activities that you want to do very, very well. For example, you want to have a very good service levels, be it in case of Snapdeal. You want to have a very strong breadth of offering when it comes to you being a Snapdeal or marketplace model. But as an entrepreneur, for each of these critical success factors, you need to have a very measurable and tangible metric that you can go out and sort of get more information on. Which means that if I'm a Snapdeal and if customer satisfaction becomes a critical component of my success, I need to know what metric do I need to measure in order to say that this critical success factor is working for me. For example, it could be an NPS score, which is a net promoter score, as what consumers perceive that product to be. It could be the return purchase that an individual customers are going through. So you need to, for each critical success factor, you need to create that right tangible and measurable metric that allows you to sort of figure out how you're going to measure those sort of tangible metrics. And the reason why this becomes important, and it's a critical point for you to sort of figure out, is because as an entrepreneur, as you sort of scale up, there will be multiple activities that will be important for your success. So you as an entrepreneur should be able to identify and define what metrics you're going to track. And that's the metric that you will go after and see that, look, on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, this is where I'm reaching, this is where I'm sort of coming along. So in order for you to be successful in the long run, you need to set a process wherein you can actually identify those metrics and measure them and monitor them continuously. This need not be relevant as you are starting up in your sort of first few first few days of your venture, but it becomes quite relevant as you start scaling up in the future. Every investor that will come to you will ask for some of these KPIs that they want to sort of go through. How many MAUs do you have, which means how many monthly active users do you have? How many daily active users do you have? What's the repeat purchase? What's an LTV? What's a churn rate, etc. So some of these tangible, measurable metrics become very relevant as you start sort of scaling up the business, because that's the easiest and the most relevant way in which you can communicate what you are trying to do in your venture for each of these success factor idea. So I'm just going to pick up one more question, guys, here, which came from Kiran. I think the question was, in case of Facebook and LinkedIn, what are the major critical success factors? See, Facebook and LinkedIn are very, very interesting business models if you think of it, because I think it has a very strong network effect happening. So more people on Facebook means more people on Facebook will come again. So for Facebook, it becomes important to get as many people hooked on to the platform as they can. And I think there, the critical success factor becomes the ability for anyone to come to the platform and use the platform. The usability of the platform, how easy it is for anyone to sort of come and like a post, share a post, interact with their friends, etc. So with that pain point, how do you execute on the platform becomes quite useful. And you could see from 2004, 2005 onwards how Facebook portal or how Facebook platform has evolved in the future. The second thing that becomes very important for Facebook is to make it a very sort of hooked platform. And when I say making it a hooked platform, it goes beyond the user interface and the product design. It goes a lot into how much data they can leverage and sort of drive upon coming out with customized solutions and customized recommendation for you, such that every time that you log on, Kiran, they tell you your best friend is doing what in a particular locality. If you are in Bombay, they may probably throw up more recommendations about Bombay than anything else. So that recommendation, that personalization becomes very useful for Facebook. And I think the other part which we tend to ignore, and that's what drives the bread and butter for Facebook and models like LinkedIn, is the ability for them to go out and collect the advertising dollar. So having a very strong B2B team which can demonstrate the success of the platform and be able to charge the consumer for putting up their ads becomes very useful. So if you look at Facebook and LinkedIn operations in India, there are fewer product and tech guys based out of India, but a large portion of them are sales executives who go out and pitch for their program, for their sort of portal, and talk about for anyone to sort of advertise on the platform. And that's how the bread and butter comes up. Over the course of time, they automate a lot of things, but that feet on the street B2B sales force becomes quite relevant for them. Yeah. So I think let me just sort of move on into this example of Zomato. And with the same thing, I'll just quickly run you through with what Zomato's critical success factor is. So on slide 8, we have a very sort of quick representation taken from Zomato's website itself. How Zomato, what kind of offering is Zomato sort of providing to individuals? You can find the best restaurant, you can see the information, you can discover what restaurants are for your own mood, etc., and then create your own sort of personal food diary. So Zomato's discovery platform, and not necessarily the delivery platform, is all about building a community where people can discover newer restaurants and sort of map up to the taste and the mood that they are currently in. Now, in order for them to do that, let's just go back to the tactical step that we had initially spoken of, is how do I break down Zomato's thing into a process-based or process chain-based approach. So now I'm on slide 9. And if you guys think of Zomato's example in terms of process chain, there are the following steps that Zomato has to do in order to be successful. Step 1 is they need to have as many people using their app as they can. Step 2 is to having an extensive listing of restaurants on their platform. Step 3 is about providing the right information to the users. Step 4 is how easy it is to navigate through the platform. And the step 5, which is the other end of the spectrum, which is how can they charge a higher amount for their advertisement that they're posting up on the platform. Because ultimately, the way a Zomato makes money is through the advertisement that various restaurants are putting up on Zomato's platform. So let's just look at each of these steps and talk about the critical success factor of them. If you have to increase the app download, it's about having the right tie-ups, be it in terms of restaurant distributor, but also in terms of having tie-ups with a Micromax or a Samsung, where they can have a preloaded app installed on the new phone that they are selling. It is in the form of digital marketing. How can they reach out the word to many people such that they download the app? It is in the form of word of mouth, and that's what drives Zomato's more and more people to download Zomato app and use Zomato's app. Making users happy is the second sort of important part of what Zomato does, and that's where extensive listing, you need to have on-the-ground team to collect menus from various locations. You need to have very strong local presence, which is extendable and expandable. You need to get the right information collected and be able to sort of provide those right information to the end user in the most neat manner as they can. Have a very strong user interface, product experience that everyone is very happy. Have a very strong the data platform that allows you to sort of ensure, or the backend platform that allows you to be very adaptive and agile and sort of scalable. And then finally be able to go out and get the right restaurant to pay for the advertisement on your platform. And for each one of them, you then need to figure out what should be the KPI. So if you need to if you need to increase the app downloads, the KPIs become the number of app downloaded, which Zomato would be tracking on a regular basis. How many active users are there on a monthly or on a daily basis? And they define active users with certain criteria. For extensive listing, it's about how many new listings are they coming out on the platform on a month-on-month basis. Because remember, in a restaurant business, there's a high churn and restaurants shut down and change the menus very often. What is the coverage as a percentage of total restaurant that you can sort of bring onto the platform? Similarly, when it comes to curated information, it's about how large your content team is, how many content pieces they can come out with on a regular basis, how many shares can they create from the content pieces, how many likes they can create from a content piece, etc. So the objective of these KPIs beyond the critical success factor is to have those tangible and measurable numbers which you can talk about and sort of communicate at the end of the day. And that tangible numbers become very, very relevant because that's what you can easily measure. And each of these KPI, the way you need to think of it is there could be an input KPI and there could be an output KPI. An input KPI is something which is absolutely in your control. So for example, if you are a sales person, how many restaurants do you visit in a daily basis becomes your input KPI. And output KPI is what proportion of the restaurants actually convert into putting an ad on a Zomato's platform. And therefore having a very clear demarcation as you start scaling up between the input KPIs and output KPIs such that you can measure them very, very clearly. I think there's a question that came up on the platform from Makran, which is about quantifying how to quantify quality and usability, which are soft factor in KPI or CSF. So Makran, if I understand your question correctly, you are looking at how do I ensure the quality and usability from a consumer perspective converted into KPI and CSF? And if that is the question, there you need to think of simple terms like what kind of net promoter scores are your consumers giving you? What kind of renewals are your consumers going through on the platform? And each of these elements in some form or fashion can be provided in the form of a quantifiable data. An NPS score is an important metric, and let me just take 2 minutes of my time to sort of talk about that. An NPS score is essentially you ask your own consumer on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend your product to any other person in your friend and family network? And people would rate you anywhere between 1 to 10, 10 being most likely and 1 being least likely. You need to take up all the scores which are, I think, 9 and 10, and subtract all the scores which are between 1 and 6. And that as a percentage of the total number of respondents would mean your net promoter score. So the number of positive reinforcer for your own brand versus number of detractors, the difference in the two gives you the net promoter score. So a lot of these factors which you think it's qualitative in some form or fashion can be quantified as well. Yeah. So I think there was a question which came up, and let me just sort of take up that question also. Let me just go back and switch on my screen so that I am back on the screen as well. I think there was a question that came up from from Pradeep, which spoke of critical success factor if you are starting with an offline sweet and snack businesses. Again, I don't know exactly how the business model is, Pradeep, but if it's in the form of a restaurant, then your critical success factor becomes how you can come out with a standardized quality of that sweet and snacks every time that you produce them, how the taste of it can be exactly similar such that you can scale up very easily. That mean that you should look at how a McDonald's scales up their processes and sort of gives them a consistent experience to any individual. Two would be about if it is a packaging business, it will come down to how robust the process is so that you can actually package them in the least amount of time with the least amount of cost, because in that business the cost of the packaging becomes quite crucial at the end of the day. So you need to have a very clear sense of how that packaging process works down. So you need to think of right from the start how do you source a raw material for that sweet and snacks business. How do you create that process in which that raw material gets converted into the right sweets and snacks? How do you get those consumers to order for that sweet and snacks? How do you get that thing ultimately packaged and delivered to the end consumer? And for each of these sort of process chain, if I break down the process for you, I will then sit down and figure out what should be the critical success factor in each element of that. So on a very sort of fundamental thought process level, sit down, think about how does that step actually work out right from the time that you have thought about the idea to actually taking to execution and fruition. And therein, each step you can actually come out with a sort of very strong critical success factor for yourself. And I think Rajesh also had a question about a food product domain, cookies. That I think, Rajesh, the question is not about critical success factors. So let me just sort of answer that slightly later. Um, Denzel had a question, which is I think important in case of Big Basket, PepperTap, Zopnow. What is the critical success factor? Let me touch upon let me use it through Big Basket example, because PepperTap and Zopnow sort of have slightly sort of different models also. But I think for them, the critical success factor is about very similar to what Snapdeal we discussed, having the right set of offerings that you can provide on the platform. How do you ensure that those offerings are easily discoverable onto the platform? But the most important element of the critical success factor, which is very different from Snapdeal or Flipkart of the world, is that their products are actually perishable. So if you don't deliver a particular vegetable on time, that will go bad very, very quickly. And therefore it becomes very important for them to have a very strong sourcing, warehousing, and then distribution network. So the way a guy like Big Basket works is they have a centralized warehouse where all their vegetables are actually kept from when they are sourced and saved there in a cold chain storage. That particular place is where they chop up the vegetables at the right quantity. So having a right process built in inside that storage space, where they can package them properly and sort of allocate them in the right manner, becomes critical. And then be able to be delivering those things at the right time to the end consumer. So figuring out where they should source the product, because the travel also a lot of vegetables get damaged. Figuring out where they should set up those warehousing and cold store chains such that they can keep all the vegetables fresh all the time. Figuring out what should the distribution and the delivery mechanism for their own product are all these elements which becomes a critical success factor. So I think CSF and identifying CSF is not a rocket science. I think it all boils down to you being able to break down the process in a very, very easy manner. Just picking up an example that another participant had mentioned, Rahul, which he's distributing academic books and stationery in Rourkela. I think there it's a for him to sort of figuring out the critical success factor for his own venture through physical store and online. I think there it becomes very important, how do you reach out to schools and what kind of relationship do you form with schools at the end of the day, because I think a large part of product being sold in stationery, in books, actually are relevant to having the right relationship with schools at the end of the day. So figuring out the B2B sales mode where you can have the right relationship with all schools in Rourkela and being able to forge a relationship in the right manner, and therefore having the right sort of a sales and slash BD team who's always going out and meeting them, understanding what the needs and the requirements are, and be able to provide the right product is going to be crucial. The second thing which people fail to look at specifically when it comes to India is the quality of the product. I think in the stationery business, very frankly, the quality of the product needs a significant improvement. So I think any improvement on the quality of the product, being able to provide the best quality paper, being able to provide the best quality design, being able to provide the best utility of that notebook will become an important critical success factor. And that could also be, in the long run, your sort of significant differentiator. So I think, hope, Rahul, that gives you an answer on the critical success factor that you are thinking of. Let me pick up another question. I think Shubha had an important question, and I think it's important for me to raise that also, that there are many Me Too ventures that are coming up and getting funded. So how important is it to have critical success factors which are about how to quickly react to great competitors suddenly entering in the market in the future? I think it is important, but I think my personal take is you cannot build a business for what the competitor would be doing. I think a sign of a great business is, yes, you should understand what your competitors are doing, but it's very important for you to be very true to what your consumers are finally looking for. And if you do well in what the consumers are looking for, and sort of that the consumers ultimately want, I think you will not have to worry about what the competitors are doing. Having said that, when you sort of draw out the critical success factor for your own venture, it becomes very, very important uh, of those critical success factor to pick up one or two which you feel will become absolutely difficult for anyone to replicate. So in case of a Snapdeal or a Flipkart, they pay a lot of attention to logistics and last mile delivery. For them, that becomes a differentiator. So to your question, Subha, instead of figuring out what the competitor would be doing and then figuring out my own reaction, at an early stage, I would go all out to ensure that I'm providing the best experience for my end consumer. If that means, and that would also mean that for all the critical success factors that you identify, you pick up one or two which you really feel are going to be an element that no one can copy. I mean, going out and setting up a logistics network, it's difficult for anyone to copy. So you need to pick up that one or two thing which is difficult for someone to copy and just put all your time and energy into getting that particular differentiator factor right top notch. So as I always, we also said on that in that session that critical success factor is a superset. The elements that you think that others cannot replicate are going to be a differentiating factor, and that's a subset of the critical success factor. But having said that, knowing what the competitors are doing, having a team that tracks what the competitors are doing is important. And I think that should be the job of the CEO and the entrepreneur, to know what your competitors are doing and be able to figure out what you should do in order to sort of win against them. All right, let me just go back to the set. I think we have covered all the set of slides. I think now let's open it up for a sort of full Q&A, and I'll sort of keep on getting questions one by one. Just give me a second. I'll just sort of take a sip of water or sip of Coke. Yeah. So Neeraj, I think you had a question which is about CSF and KPIs for home services startup. So I believe that you're talking about the urban clap or the time savers, that kind of a model. I think there it's an aggregation based model. So for a lot of them, the guys who are providing those services are not on the rolls of the company, and therefore a critical success factor for them becomes their ability to tie up with a lot of these local vendors, so local carpenter or a local plumber, and having that feet on the street who goes out and gets each one of these guys to talk to them becomes a critical success factor for their own venture. So they will have a team of people who will go out to, let's say, if you are in Delhi, they will go out to a Greater Kailash, a Defense Colony, and East of Kailash, a South X, etc., and get and aggregate each one of those local vendors. Once they have aggregated those local vendors, it's about putting them up on the platform. So the experience on the platform has to be very seamless. The challenge of putting anyone onto the platform is that you need to have the right quality checks, whether the guy whom you are putting up on the platform, who is a vendor, let's say, who's a plumber in East of Kailash, offering on your own platform, it is important for you to do the right quality checks, whether the person at the end of the day, for a home services startup, it becomes very important what the experience of the consumer is when the a plumber or the electrician goes inside the house of that particular individual. And therefore, doing a pre-quality checks will become very, very relevant for the success of that particular venture. So that's the second element of that. The third element is, yes, the UI UX, the self-rating mechanism, the data platform. How do you sort of improve upon that becomes the other critical success factor for them. The fourth one is about the ability to get consumers on the platform. More consumers coming in, they will have the ability to charge more from the end. How do I say, the commission from the plumber or the electrician, and therefore the ability to get as many users hooked onto the platform becomes the other element of the critical success factor. So again, with all those examples, I hope the message that I want to bring out is, A, it's not rocket science. You just need to sit down and break down the process, but be very honest when you're breaking down the process such that you're covering almost each and every element of it. The important part is of this critical success factor for you to be able to pick up one or two elements which you feel are going to be your differentiating factor. Because if you go tomorrow, all of them will be doing the critical success factor in some form or fashion. It will become some kind of a hygiene factor. But the one or two things where you really want to sort of focus on, which others cannot find it easy to replicate, will become your long-term differentiator. Yeah. So Neeraj, I hope that answers your question to some extent. It's just sort of very common sense and sort of take them through each element and sort of dive deeper on that. Let me sort of look at some of the other questions. Give me a second, guys. Yeah. There's a question that came from Praveen, that customer sourcing is important for any business. And any thoughts on how can we source students for skill development as we are facing a huge gap due to lack of interest? I think for skill development, I don't know what kind of sector that you're talking about, Praveen, if it is really premium or if it is sort of blue collar sort of skill development. But in a blue collar one, and I can tell you sort of from my own experience in looking at education, having the right B2G connect and having the right B2G partnership will become fairly important, because a business to government partnership allows you to access some of the ITIs, and those ITIs will get you access to some of the students, and that will only come if you have a very strong government connection at the end of the day. Yeah. So having the right partnership, and then even if you advertise, ultimately connecting those individuals who are coming in for the skill development to jobs, and therefore focusing on the job element and getting the job element sorted out is going to be a critical success factor for you. Because if you can tell someone that, look, come and do this program, and if you come and get graded at ABC, you will end up getting a job at a particular company. So therefore, a critical success factor in that kind of a venture will become how you will create that corporate relationships at the end of the day. So having the right business relationship and government relationship will be a critical success factor. I'm not talking about a lot of other elements, which I think it's self-evident, what kind of curriculum you're offering, what kind of programs you're offering, etc. Let me pick up a question that Anoop had. What is the critical success factor for on-demand cab services where the pricing per kilometer is crucial for customer rather than experience? I think that's a call that, Anoop, it's a good question. Till how long pricing can be a differentiator? And if pricing is the differentiator for someone, that business will get commoditized. So for an end consumer, if the product service level is not a differentiator, then the question that you need to ask yourself, is that the right business for you to get in? And if it's all about pricing, then someone else will price it slightly better. Then it all gets down to how I can standardize the processes, how I can ensure that I'm leveraging data. I don't ask my driver to travel from one place to a long distance, so that there's the least amount of petrol being wasted. The process management such that you can bring down the cost as low as possible will become your critical success factor. Having said that, a more fundamental question that needs to be asked is, if price is the only differentiator, how sustainable is that business, and is it worth entering a business which will get commoditized like a steel or like a salt business, where there's not that much of a differentiator when it comes to one product versus another product. Yeah, so I think Amit again had a question related to home services. So Amit, your question is, how do you monitor the issue of leakage in companies like Time Savers or Urban Clap as a service provider, as as an individual tend to become a direct customer of that particular service provider? I think the answer of that is still pending, and I think the answer of that will come from the fact that if more and more consumers start relying on that end consumer, or rather the end provider as Time Savers or Urban Clap to sort of provide them with the right vendor, that model will work out, which actually boils down to the entire concept, their ability to get customers hooked onto the platform, which is a function of how good the platform is and what kind of services they are offering. If I'm dealing with an end consumer, the reason why we don't want to deal with the end vendor individually as a consumer is because we feel there's a significant variability in the process. Their ability to come on time as a professional is sort of not very strong, and therefore if a platform can provide me the guarantee that look, the person will come on time, the person will deliver on time, the person will do the quality of service on time, and there's no gap in the pricing that the vendor asks for and what you are asking for. So creating a positioning which gives them a right element of being able to source customers very well and being able to provide them a experience which they find it trustworthy. It will take some time, Amit. I know that this has not been demonstrated and solved, but let's see how each one of these guys sort of go about solving for that problem. Yeah, let me just take one last question on the platform, and then I'll just sort of get on to what individuals have asked us on the Google form. Rakesh had a question: is what will be the critical success factor and KPI for digital local ad platforms? I think its ability to sort of get the right information on the platform and make it sort of available to individuals in a more seamless manner. So for a Just Dial, having the right set of vendors, restaurants, putting the information on the platform will become the critical success factor. So that B2B team is going to be very crucial when it becomes Zopper or Just Dial. And even if you see right now, Just Dial will hire a lot of people who are on the field sales representative, and their role is all about going out to individual shops and locations to get them listed on their own platform. One way of figuring out a good critical success factor of any venture is to go to the job portal, see what kind of people they are hiring, and you will get a very clear sense as to what is their critical success factor at the end of the day. Yeah. So now let me just move on in the interest of time to pick up some of the questions that we received on the Google Google platform, where each one of you had asked a certain specific question about your own venture. So let me quickly start taking it up one by one. I think there was a question about by Ambrish, who had put up on the Google document, which was about he has a B2B solution which allows any business or any retailer to compete or to create their own marketplace similar to a Flipkart or Amazon. So his question was, how do you come out and figuring out the value chain for any business and how to think of the critical success factor in the venture that he's thinking of. So I think the process, Ambrish, should be very clearly defined in the lectures and what we went through in the live session also. So you should sort of go through this. And I think for your own venture, there is a lot of similarity with what you will have to offer with what a Flipkart, Amazon, or Snapdeal go through. So just breaking down the process of approaching those retailers, asking those retailers to put their listings onto your own platform and sort of creating a marketplace of their own, and then getting consumers onto that own platform. So I think if you break down the process into these three elements, you will be able to get down to what the critical success factor will be. But the question that you had was about the process. I think the process is very well defined in the lectures and in what we went through right now. So Tarun Mishra had a question. He's offering some kind of a platform that allows individuals to pay for the NGOs and charities, and he wanted to figure out how he can create that platform where he can tie up with some of these how do I say, MNCs, etc., where people can start paying as an online shopper for his own venture. So his question was, one of my key activities is the agreement with e-commerce providers so that we get enough commission from them and distribute handsomely to NGOs. So for every transaction, he can charge a commission from the e-commerce provider and offer it back to the NGOs. I think there, his question was for his critical success factor. He believes that the tie-up is very important. So who should be the right person that he should hire? Is it the marketing guy, a sales guy, or a business development guy? I think for me right now, Tarun, the answer would be to look at a BD or a sales guy, because a business development and a sales guy is the right person who will go out and talk to these e-commerce provider and get them to give out a commission at the end of the day. and that's how you should sort of get the team also ready. That start as a founder talking to the Flipkarts, the Amazons, the e-commerce provider to see whether that kind of an idea would work with them or not. Yeah. There was another question that I should pick up, which is a very interesting question that came up on the platform, which was by Shejin. I think Shejin had a question that he is thinking of a service-based platform where he can provide any married couples with the right kind of counseling, any kind of support that are needed to ensure that that the marriage is successful, be it in terms of a counselor, a behavioral consultant, a babysitter, a nanny, any career-related sort of feedback. The idea is to reinforce the importance of family and how both partners can use technology to get access to domain experts to solve their own problems. It's a very good idea. I think the question that he has for this idea is aggregation of services versus products. What are my views? I think I just want to sort of touch upon this because aggregation of products and services is a question that will keep on coming to a lot of you guys, because a lot of you are thinking in terms of a service-based platform, e-commerce-based platform, etc. Here's the answer to that. If you look at a spectrum of products, there are certain products which are very standardized, like mobile phones. There are products which are very sort of variant in nature, which is a fashion retail or a furniture that you are sort of ordering. And then there are services which are absolutely different, and it's very difficult to sort of customize them and make it very standardized. As you go through the spectrum from a very standardized product to unstandardized product to an unstandardized services, it becomes very difficult to ensure the consistency of experience for consumers. And therefore, each of these adds to defensibility, because if it is difficult for someone to do, it is difficult for anyone else to do. And in that context, I think his point about, and sort of saying the way you should think about it, is that these services will become absolutely difficult to standardize. And therefore, spending a lot of time in getting a very small set of people to come onto the platform, an Urban Clap or a Time Savers will get very small set of vendors to come on the platform, work with them, figure out how you can provide the right experience to a larger base of customers. And as the customer base start expanding, keep adding on individual vendors onto your platform. So once you go towards services, having the right quality check of which service provider are you bringing to the platform will become very crucial. And that will be the differential that you will offer. What quality checks that you do, what services level that you are keeping as a standardized service level that allows anyone to come in. And those elements of process at the service end will become a differentiating factor for your own venture. Yeah. So Sejin, I know that it's tough to sort of create consistency in services, but sitting down and trying to do with a smaller set and then defining the process such that you can standardize them is going to be important for your own venture. Let me pick up one more question. Just give me a second. Yeah, so there was a question that came about a home chef business by Anup. Anup wanted to provide individuals where they can search, compare, and hire, and ask customized chef what kind of food they are looking at the end of the day. I think his question was more around go-to-market. And let me just sort of answer this because it's a very important thing for all of you to sort of also keep in mind. His question was, when you're starting up, should I get many chefs? Should I focus on getting many customers? Who should I start getting onto the platform? And how many should I get onto the platform in the initial time? So Anup, I think on that, the way to think of it is start small. Start getting the chefs first on the platform. Get 2 or 3 chefs that you know really well in a particular locality. So if you're from Bombay, get it from one particular locality itself. And get those 2 or 3 chefs that you really trust. Work with them and get them engaged on your business model idea also. After you get those 1 or 2 chefs, get other users one by one. It's important to get the chefs first, the reason being that allows you to figure out how you can create that experience, and then get the users to work with those chefs initially. And as the users start expanding, keep on adding other chefs onto your platform. And the reason why I'm saying this is once you get them, you will be in a position to sort of easily define the process, how the experience of the end user can be sort of managed, and you can ensure that you have a better utilization of those chefs at the end of the day. And that's how you should sort of think of building the business. So for anyone thinking of two-sided networks, it is important to get the service providers or the product on the platform first. Once you get them, you can get the consumers to see how they interact with the product or services, and then over the course of time start scaling up. Getting a fewer set of service providers or vendors on the platform is important, because that will allow you to ensure that you are providing a more a more sort of closed experience for any individual. And if that experience works, you know how to scale up in the future. Yeah. Just give me a second. I'll just pick up one more question after this. There is a question. Let me just pick up one last question that I think the rest of the question, there's a question by Sandeep about birthday cakes. I think Sandeep, in the example of Marush, Marush and Big Basket that we discussed, where perishability of product is important in case of Big Basket, and that would be the case in case of birthday cakes also, and distribution in case of Marush, etc., will be crucial. So I think to some extent, Sandeep, your answer would have got covered in those discussions. So I'm not going to pick up this question separately, but we'll request our team to sort of get back to you on the answer of this question individually. There were a few questions that I'm going to sort of close the discussion with that came up on the chat forum. Give me a second. There's a question by Neeraj, very personalized question. So let me sort of quickly tackle that. What would be the right strategy and time to expand the list of services and products for a venture if the demand is there? I think there is there is no time. If you think there is a product market fit, and it's very important to get the product market fit tested, which is if there is a need, this is my product. If an initial set of consumers are liking interacting with the product, if they are liking it, just go out and scale up very quickly. So getting answer to a product market fit is going to be crucial for you to figure out whether you should just go about expanding the list of services and products that you have for your own venture. Focus on a smaller set of products and figure out whether there is a product market fit or not. There is a generic question that comes up, and I think it was asked by Vamsi, but I'll make it a more generic question. If the market is large, let's say, for example, the online grocery market, and there are biggies like Grofers, Peppertap, and Big Basket with a good business model, should you still go ahead and launch in that market, given that there are so many biggies existing in the market? I think it's a very personalized question, but here's how I see this. If the market is big, just go for it. But before you go for it, you need to figure out that one thing that you can really do better than all these biggies that already exist in that market. So if Grofers and Big Basket and Peppertap already exist in online grocery, what kind of tweaks you can offer to your own business model that allows you to sort of create a strong differentiation as compared to anyone else? And I go back and giving the same example. Facebook was not the first social media platform. Google was not the first search engine. There were already biggies that existed in that market. If you come out with the right business model and the right differentiator that takes the quality of experience of the individual end consumer significantly higher, I think you will succeed. Flipkart also in India was not the first online grocery or online sort of retailer. There were many that existed before Flipkart. But if you execute well, having the right clarity of thought as to what your differentiation will be, you should be able to succeed. Having said that, in online grocery, Grofers, Peppertap, and Big Basket are coming with a significant deep pockets. How will you create differentiation? And if that differentiation requires a lot of money, how will you go about raising money will become very, very crucial for you to answer. So I think I have covered most of the questions, at least the selected question that we had from the Google document. There were a lot of interesting questions that came up. Some of them got missed out because of the time constraint. But I think in totality, what I wanted to sort of summarize in terms of critical success factor and KPI. A CSF is very important for all of you to think about your own venture. There is a very theoretical way in which you can figure out CSF. There's a tactical way in which you can find out CSF, which we call it as an UpGrad way of finding critical success factors. Go with those tactical step of finding those process chain approach or the value chain approach or the formula-based approach. Once you go through them and think in a very systematic manner, what are the activities required to meet my goals and my vision? And how can I sort of work on those activities? You will be able to define what the critical success factors will be for your own venture. Once you define those critical success factors, it is important for you to figure out of these 5 or 6 critical success factors, what's that 1 or 2 that is going to be a long-term differentiation that others cannot replicate at the end of the day. And that is something that you need to focus on as a differentiating factor, which is subset of critical success factors. The third thing in this entire sort of discussion was the importance of KPIs. It's not important today when you're starting up a venture, but as you scale up, knowing what data to track for each of your critical success factors is going to define how you're going to measure each one of them. What goals will you keep for each critical success factor? So KPIs become probably a phase 2 of how you measure those critical success factors at the end of the day. It's not a rocket science. It's a very intuitive way of coming out with an answer. I hope the discussion today gave you a good view of how to think of CSF and KPIs. And yeah, if there are any further questions, please raise it up on the discussion forum. Please discuss this with the peers. At our end, we are working towards wrapping up the first 3 weeks. So you will start getting more and more feedback from our side also. My request would be to go through the case studies that exist, to go through the lectures that exist on the platform. It will give you a lot of clarity, but just going through the case studies and going through the lectures will not suffice. You have to interact with other students, the fellow peers, your TAs, your buddies, and create an entire ecosystem around which. So go and meet up with other fellow students and fellow participants and get an answer to some of the questions that you have. So I think with that, yeah, so there is the last thing, which there will be a feedback link that will be shared with you guys. And please provide us feedback, because any feedback that you provide is always useful for us to improve the session next time. This time we are doing it on a different platform. Last time we did it in a VizIQ platform. Today we are doing it in Google Hangout. So all the feedback that we get from each of these discussions is useful. So there's a feedback link that will be shared with you guys. It's there on the chat. Kindly click on the link and give us the feedback to us. We will keep on improving the experience on the platform. Hope this was useful, and yeah, and we look forward to having you back on the next few sessions. We will be going on a break now. There will be a Christmas and a New Year's break, and we renew the sessions back on 4th of January. So I wish you guys a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hope you guys will have fun. And yeah, we look forward to connecting with you later. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks a lot.